Distinguished listeners, dear friends, dear playbills, welcome to the podcast Ellen DeGeneres doesn't want you to hear.
Oh.
It's Monkeys and Playbills, y'all!
Oh, I'm gonna need some clarification on this. The drama, the intrigue.
So do you see how I called our listeners playbills? Because we're the monkeys. I'm Paul DeGurse.
I'm Jillian Willems.
And joining us as well is a very special guest. We have Tatiana Carnevale in the studio today.
Yay!
So thrilled to have you.
Thrilled to be here.
And this is Monkeys and Playbills. It's the show where we talk about Broadway musicals that ran for 100 performances or fewer on Broadway, not counting previews.
And what the heck happened?
And today, we're talking about Taboo.
Or Taboo, if you were from overseas. Thank you.
Which they are, which most of the people working on this show are, in fact. So here, let's call it, we're taking a look at Taboo today. And did you like how I called, so like, we're the monkeys.
Yes.
Paul, Jill, producer Daff is not on a mic today, and distinguished guest Tatiana Carnevale. And so that would make our listeners the playbills.
Correct.
Of the Monkeys and Playbills, right?
Yes.
We have to assume. Tat, how are you doing today?
I'm so thrilled.
Yes.
Feeling very blessed and highly favored to be talking about Taboo. I feel like this is going to need to be about 6,000 parts. This season of Monkeys and Playbills is just about Taboo.
Welcome
surprise.
Welcome to season 3 of Monkeys and Playbills.
It's all Taboo.
It's all Taboo, featuring Tatiana Carnevale.
Correct.
Much ado
Thank you to the Canada
about-
Council.
Yes.
Taboo.
Maybe we should mention that. We'll also probably mention it at the end of the episode. Thank you to the Canada Council for providing support to this season of Monkeys and Playbills, and to the Crescent Arts Center, who are our co-presenters in both this podcast and 2 other exciting podcasts that'll be coming from the Village Conservatory in the near future.
Woo!
So I was thinking long and hard about why we had reached out to Tat to talk about this specific musical.
Yes.
I realized it's because Tat's been shouting at me about this musical for the last 15 years of our friendship.
Yes, and there is like some more context as well that I would be happy to explain to you.
Please.
Well, yeah, what does Taboo mean to you?
Well, let's travel back in time.
Woo!
The year is 1996.
Great year.
Yes.
The Rosie O'Donnell Show
Heck yeah.
is airing on, I think it was like Channel 4, Channel 5.
Totally.
Tatiana Carnevale is getting picked up from Forest Park School by her Nona
Oh,
and
thank you,
going
Nona.
to her Nona's house after school until her mom has done work. And for some reason, my Nono, who moved to Canada from Italy in 1966, I want to say. He's never bothered to learn English. He only speaks Italian. For some reason, he loves the Rosie O'Donnell Show. It's his favorite
Rosie
show.
transcends all language barriers.
And so I'm pretty sure from like 1996 to whenever I finished elementary school, I want to say it was like 2000, not to age myself here. But I watched the Rosie O'Donnell Show 5 days a week after school. And
Amazing.
I might be like obsessed with Rosie a little bit.
So it's a very important part of your life. Rosie O'Donnell
It was formative. It was formative.
Totally.
And so I love Rosie. And then I like was obsessed with this show around the year 2004. Like I would say the peak of my musical theater obsession was probably high school. Like that's when I was like the deepest into my like nerding out of musicals. And this came out and I listened to it a lot.
Yeah.
I loved the soundtrack. And also, yeah, it just like has stuck with me ever since then. I think it's so interesting, all of the offstage drama as well. And I like can't wait to talk about that.
Which is what brings Rosie into the conversation ultimately,
Exactly.
right?
Rosie O'Donnell and her $10 million in 2004 personal investment.
That is a musical I want to see, actually, what you just said. Rosie O'Donnell and her $10 million, the personal purse of Rosie O'Donnell.
It's like a kid's book or something,
Yes.
right?
Oh my God,
One
I
day-
will write it.
One day, Rosie went to the West End,
Here's how to make a
and she
terrible
saw a
investment.
show.
This is why they say don't ever invest your own money into your theater projects. But no, I love Rosie. I am obsessed with this show. I think the story behind it is so interesting. It's very gay, which I love as well.
Yes.
I'm very interested always in like queer theater and queer issues and all of that. So that's very interesting to me. So yeah, all that to say.
It's so funny. I think my first exposure to Taboo was through you. Tatiana is a
Was it
very
really?
well. So you're a very old friend of both Jill and I.
Yes.
From about the same time, but not connected. Jill and I weren't friends when we were both friends with you, which is a wild thing. But we've both been friends with you since we were like early teenagers.
Yes.
And when you were at the height of your musical obsession, you were kind of passing that down to me.
Yeah, the only reason I know about this show is through Tat. I don't know how I did not engage with it until the last few days.
I mean, it's also very much on the cusp of what you'd be looking for this podcast because it ran exactly 100 performances.
Exactly.
This
100.
is our first on the nose 100,
is.
right?
Yeah.
Thank God it did not run for one more day.
Oh, we wouldn't be here right now.
Otherwise, I would not be here.
Well, folks, should we get into it officially?
Yes.
Taboo or Taboo.
We're talking about Taboo. We're going to talk a lot about Taboo. But what we're actually covering today is Taboo.
Oh, good. Okay.
Right?
Very different show.
Because Taboo would be the UK version.
Oh, good point.
Right?
Although they speak in British accents.
Yeah.
Therefore,
Ostensibly. Some of them really do.
Some of them absolutely do.
Well,
because
and Leigh
that's-
Bowery was actually Australian.
Previews began at the Plymouth Theatre on October 28th, 2003.
Yeah.
Welcome to high school, everybody. Late junior high, early high school, right? I think.
2003. Yep. Absolutely. I'm watching Return of the King in theaters, and I am not thinking about Taboo at that point in my
And I
life.
have just met Tat
Oh, good.
a few months before.
And I have just finally started to feel comfortable saying swear words for the first time.
Love that journey for you. It officially opened on November 13th, 2003, and it closed on February 8th, 2004, after 16 previews and exactly 100 performances. And if I'm not mistaken, the video we watched was from that final performance.
Closing night. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Which is why if you check it out, the audience is just bananas.
Oh,
like
just
they
nutty.
cannot get enough.
Truly would maybe not recommend checking it out because it is such. I mean, it was 2004, so I mean, we don't have the technology, but it is.
Yeah.
It is difficult.
It is
to watch.
Yes.
absolutely.
It's
But there
got
is
some-
a recording of the London version, like a really nice
There
like
is a pro
DVD
shot of the
version,
London
pro
version.
shot. Okay, so the next thing we usually like to cover is the synopsis of the play. And one of the ways we've been doing that recently is setting a timer for 5 minutes.
Yep.
And then Paul, along with our guest, will together sort of, regale me with the plot. And then I will read my version that I found.
This is going to be wild because this plot is convoluted as
Sure is.
Oh yes, it is.
All I'll say is, who is Marilyn?
So, Tat, how well do you have this plot in your head?
Oh my God, not very well, if I'm being frank.
Okay.
But I will.
Me neither, so let's try our best.
On paper, I think the plot is actually quite simple. Like, if you were to just say, what is Taboo, the show about? I mean, I could describe it in a sentence.
Please do.
It's
We'll
just,
do it. Yeah.
it's about Boy George and his friend and colleague, Leigh Bowery, and their journey to open the Taboo nightclub in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More or less. Like,
More or less,
that's,
you're absolutely
that's
correct.
the
Yeah.
Sparks notes.
Exactly.
And their trials and tribulations
Yeah.
along the way.
Of course.
I go even further, and potentially say it's about George. It's about Boy George and Leigh Bowery's career arcs, their rise and then their fall.
Yes, which kind of echoes the rise of this Taboo.
Exactly,
Night.
yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
All
Well,
right.
that's it, I guess.
Well, there we go. Done and done. Want to try? 5 minutes?
Okay.
Do you have the timer?
I've got a timer
Oh,
right
amazing.
here. Here we go. We open on a blank stage, and out comes Mr. Raul Esparza himself.
Bisexual icon.
Bisexual
Raul
icon.
Esparza.
A little baby at this point in the game. A very young man.
Yeah, and he's like just done Rocky Horror a few years ago on Broadway. Like he's in that full. He's in the zone.
Oh, yeah.
So he sings this song. He sings like a Willkommen, Bienvenue, welcome type deal. Gets everyone in. Welcome to Taboo. It's lots of fun.
And then we cut to a payphone.
Is that where we meet
that's where
George?
Yes,
and then,
it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
and a very, I will say, like, stunningly beautiful Ewan Morton playing
agree.
Boy George.
Looking
He
just
looks-
like young Boy George. Wow.
Yeah, he looks beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
that was one of the things that I was like,
Yeah,
wow.
angelic.
He looks good.
Yeah.
And he's on a payphone. And he is singing to his mom, I think.
Oh, and it's a great song. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, and
Uh-huh.
he's basically singing about how he has to, like, leave
Yeah.
Yes.
the nest to kind of begin his career.
Yeah.
in
Then we
London.
meet Nicola, a woman named Nicola.
Yes.
And she wants to go out clubbing. She's into this new
Yes.
this new scene that's emerging in the UK, this kind of underground club scene.
Yes.
She's like, I want to go clubbing. What's preventing her from going? Is her mom being like, no,
She
you
can't
can't,
get
go?
in,
She can't,
actually.
because she tries. So she tries to
Yeah.
go, and she can't get into
Yeah,
this new.
she's not looking cool
this
enough,
underground party.
unfortunately.
Because she's never been, so she's just guessing what is
Yeah.
cool, because she's never been
But I think
inside.
also her mom.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're
But
probably
then
right.
does Big Sue help her get in? A woman named
Yes.
Big Sue.
Yes.
She gets in. Then we're in
So-
the club. Then we meet kind of like, we see Raul Esparza again in kind of another assortment of...
Yeah, and this is like a big old scene of like all sorts of a lot of queer people. This is like a kind of a queer party scene.
Yeah.
And we see a performer named Marilyn, kind of dressed as a Marilyn Monroe type deal,
Yeah.
performing.
This makes sense now.
Yeah. But like not really. Like I don't blame you
I
for
know.
not realizing
No, you're
that.
right. Yeah,
but I
yeah.
think that's the idea.
It took me a minute.
Introducing the ensemble. Then then we're in the bathroom.
We're in the bathroom,
Then
That's
we
right.
meet...
and that's where we meet Leigh
George.
Bowery, who is
Playing.
played by Boy George. So yes, Boy George is in this musical and is also portrayed in this musical
Yes.
by two different people.
It's amazing.
So Boy George, the person, the actual real life person, is playing fashion performing artist icon Leigh Bowery.
Yes.
So we meet Leigh Bowery. Leigh Bowery meets Nicola.
Yes.
And it's
also,
like-
we're only 10 minutes into the play right now.
Yeah, and we are over half done our time. Okay.
Very good.
Tells
Very
you
good.
everything you need
Meets
to know.
Nicola. Wow, that's Nicola. George meets a
Photographer.
named Marcus,
Oh, yes.
Yeah, then they go to his, like, squat.
and they hook up.
They don't hook
They
up.
don't hook up, but they
But
like
then
flirt.
they do hook up.
So they at some point they hook up, and oh look at this, George is actually. Maybe you could call me Boy George. My friends call me Boy
then
George.
Raul Esparza's like, I was the one that came up with that. And it's like my favorite part of the soundtrack.
So the rest of Act 1 kind of talks about Boy George's rise to
Yes,
fame as part of
ending
Culture
with
Club.
the Act 1 finale, which is Karma Chameleon, the club goes wild.
Yeah.
God.
And the club is called Taboo.
Yes.
Boom.
That's the end of Act 1.
Now
1
London.
minute, 15 seconds. Act 2.
Okay. Wow, everything goes to shit.
Everything goes to shit. Boy
Shit
George
hits the
starts using
fan.
a bunch of drugs.
Yes.
Leigh Bowery gets AIDS.
He has AIDS.
Everything
We see
is
a bunch
bad.
of- a bunch of
Big
depiction-
Sue is upset.
Big Sue's upset.
She had to get a real job.
We see a bunch of depictions of Leigh Bowery's famous performance art, which is really cool.
Yes. Oh, Raul Esparza gets beat up
Because
and
Marcus
sings the 11 o'clock number.
tells the press that George is using too much drugs to help George get clean.
Yes.
And Raul Esparza is like, hey, that was a fucked up thing you did.
Yeah.
And all of Marcus's straight friends beat up Raul Esparza.
Yes. Then he sings a beautiful 11 o'clock
Then he
number.
sings a beautiful 11 o'clock
Correct.
number. Then Leigh Bowery dies?
Then Leigh
Yeah.
Bowery dies, and then we get to the finale, which is very like the end of Rent. Like
It's like
there's
Follies.
only
Oh, it's contemporary follies.
Absolutely.
Like, to me.
but also Rent.
18
and-
seconds left. Is there anything we want to add? It's very long.
It's so long.
It's there's a lot of stuff here. Some of it's great. Some of it's very bad, but that's with the amount of content they have,
Yes.
that's just to be expected.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But some of it's great.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything to add to the plot. There are some things I want to talk about, like when we actually discuss the book, but I think that was a
And that's
really
time.
clear and concise.
That's about as concise as it's going to get, honestly.
So impressed.
yeah.
This is going to be interesting because I did, in trying to decipher this, I tried to look up what this show's about. Let's hear what you found, Jill.
Okay, so I will preface this by saying I had to get very detailed in my Google search. So normally you can just type in the name of the show and the synopsis and it'll take you straight to the Broadway, like a very concise 2-line Broadway
Absolutely.
synopsis. But in this case, because the London production seemed to have more traction, that one was the focus and they're vastly different from one another. The way I found the more fleshed out synopsis was on a Broadway World blog. That had the best synopsis of the Broadway version. So that's where I found
I
that.
found this same one, and it's what I used while I was watching the book
Yes,
to follow what
me
was going on.
too.
Because it's
So
wild.
there's that. But then I also found this one that's a couple like short paragraphs from guide to musicaltheater.com. Okay, Here we go. The action is set in the flamboyant London club scene. It was a world of narcissism and camp bitchery, strongly influenced by what pop stars such as David Bowie had been doing 10 years earlier. So this is our nod to the new romantic era. Okay.
Right.
Against the gay and decadent background of clubbers, we have a traditional boy meets girl story. The fresh-faced hero, Billy, who's Billy, abandons dreary Bromley, which we kind of talked about, determined to become a face on the London scene, falls for Kim, who beneath her goth war paint turns out to be a devastatingly pretty, touchingly vulnerable virgin. True love, however, doesn't run smoothly. So I must have picked that before finishing The Boot and realizing, because I kept going, who is Billy? Like, who are they talking about? Did you have a similar
exact same
thing
experience.
happen?
Yeah.
In our Broadway version, there's no Billy.
No.
There's no Kim. We actually seem to go back to maybe more in line with real, true humans who existed for Broadway. So there's obviously calls to Boy George himself. There's calls to Nicola, who was a real person married to Leigh Bowery. Like, we get the real people in the Broadway version, whereas maybe in London they were sort of alluding to these individuals and maybe not so much exactly referencing.
The transfer of moving the show from London to Broadway is like a major, and the way that happened is a major failing, I will say.
So it's in London.
It's in a club.
It's in a club in London.
It's in a club in London.
Yes. It is not at a theater. It is a theater production that's being staged in a club of some sort.
Very cool. And it's all Boy George. This is like Boy George collaborators making this happen. Boy George and his producers wrote all the music.
Yes.
It's got the plot that Jill just described.
And it is like, for listeners that may not know, Boy George wrote the score, but it's not a jukebox musical in that we only have 2 of his hits from the time period, and all the rest is brand new music. Yeah.
Which is very cool. I was confused about that as well, because I don't super know Boy George's music, so I was like looking through his stuff being like...
You couldn't tell just by listening to the soundtrack?
Very fair, very fair.
Come on. But yes.
So in London, in the UK
Rosie
production...
O'Donnell sees the show.
And it's starring Luke Evans is the other thing you mentioned. The UK production is...
And Ewan Morton is in it as well. Ewan Morton is playing his same role. Yeah.
And Luke Evans is playing Billy. Billy, and is that his name?
Well, yeah, that would have been the character he played, yes.
Yeah,
would
who does
be
not
Billy,
who does not appear in the Broadway version.
The most similar character I can think of is Marcus, and they took that in a new direction, which is good. I think the direction... Okay, but anyway.
Yeah, well, exactly, because Rosie O'Donnell comes to see the show and says...
This is great. I think she says, I'm going to bring this to Broadway.
Yep.
And then she, like, follows through on her commitment to do that, but at some point is like, but actually let's change everything about this. Yes. Except for, I think the score is the same.
Very similar.
Rosie decides the book basically needs to be, like, completely revamped, and rather than staging it in a club, they move it to the Plymouth Theater.
Yeah. And not even just revamped, totally overhauled. A completely new story.
Yeah.
Almost 100% a new story. And by all accounts, people liked the London production, right?
Oh, apparently it ran for over a year, I think, all told.
And people did not like the Broadway, or some people did not like the Broadway production. Some people really liked it.
Yes.
All right. I'm sure we're going to get into a lot more of the context as we dive in. Why don't we start moving through our categories?
Yeah, I think the context will come forward especially as we move into this first category of book, music, and lyrics. Music by Boy George. Lyrics by Boy George.
AKA George O'Dowd.
Blimey. Throw a shrimp on the barbie, eh?
Oh, no.
No, we're not.
Let's re-record this podcast again for episode 2, but all doing accent work.
Oh, that's fun. I love a dialect. Okay. Co-composer. Oh, good. Okay, so this would be sort of what we were just talking about, where it was like producers were coming to flesh this out.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So co-composer Kevin Frost.
Yeah.
Music co-writers were John Themis and Richie Stevens.
Yeah.
So I guess these are these pop folks, do we think?
Yeah,
these are collaborators of Boy George.
Yeah, these
right?
are all George's producers on his various works.
Wonderful.
So, like, close collaborators.
Book by Charles Busch. Adapted from the original book by Mark Davies. This distinction is important.
Very important.
Keep that in mind. Vocal, dance, and incidental arrangements by John McDaniel. Music orchestrated by Steve Margoshes. And original concept by Boy George and Christopher Renshaw. Keep that second name in mind for later as well.
Yes.
Okay, folks,
Okay.
where to begin? Should we start with the book? I think
Yes.
that's probably most important.
Yep.
It needed an edit.
It needs a huge edit. It's it's so long.
It's so long, and
so
I
long.
simply do not care about most of the characters.
I know,
Yep.
that's a flaw.
I care
Huge
about Raul Esparza.
Yeah.
Boy
personally,
George.
not his character, but him personally, you care about.
His character's
right?
name
That's
is Philip, right? Have we
Yeah,
haven't,
and that is a real person as well.
because we haven't said that name
Philip's-
once on the
right.
podcast so far.
good point, Paul.
Yeah, Philip Sallin,
Sallin.
I
Yeah.
think, who was a real person in the scene as well. Oh, I don't care about Big Sue.
Not at all.
Cut her.
Yeah.
She needs to go.
Goodbye.
There's like some people who say Big Sue is a real person. Boy George and Rosie O'Donnell swear she wasn't.
So weird.
So it's very bizarre.
They say she wasn't
Yeah.
real, then I think.
Oh my god, Boy George is just like that Mariah Carey meme where he's like, I don't know her.
Exactly.
I don't know her. I guess I like maybe care about Nicola, but like not really.
Not really, not deeply.
Not to the point where like she should have had that song.
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
any development beyond like being the creative partner.
Mm-hmm.
Like she could have been
Bowery, yeah.
edited quite a bit.
I
Yes.
agree completely.
Marilyn,
You gotta
Yeah.
go.
again,
Yeah.
like, did we need you?
No. Except maybe in Act 2, we see some touches of, like, true friendship from Marilyn to
Yes.
George, which
Yeah.
I think, like, if we were using Marilyn to set that up, like, we could have done that with a lot less. But I guess maybe that's what they were trying to get to in the end. I don't know. It's so hard to tell what they were aiming for, you know, as far as story and themes.
It's wild because we say, and I totally agree, we should cut all these subplots, but you don't need to add more Boy George or more Leigh Bowery because there's plenty of that.
Oh, there's lots.
It's like they did that show, and then they added another show on top of it.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and I think had we like done a major edit and removed some of these supporting characters, then we would get to see more of that friendship between those two characters who
Absolutely.
we should actually care about
Agree
Bingo.
completely.
develop, as opposed to like all of these other like extra plot points that are so unnecessary.
Yes.
It's a wordy book as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
The jokes are, and that's not even a bad thing. I don't think the actual writing of the book is that bad, all told.
My favorite line, which I wrote down.
Yeah.
I'm holding a press conference today to announce that our friendship is officially over.
Is this a Mary-Kate and Ashley movie? What's going on? Tat, you had sent us the New York Post article that sort of talks about the downfall of this play. And in it, they talked about how the director had gone in and encouraged the cast to ad-lib
Right.
as the show went on. I don't know if that was in an effort to make it more fun. I don't know. So I wonder if, Paul, some of the things you're talking about were not intended to be there by the book writer and were purely artist contributions on the fly.
They should not be. They should not have been allowed.
Yeah.
to do that.
Well, that's what I mean. but, like,
Unfortunately, too
yes.
many cooks.
Too many cooks.
Also, I mean, I think I tried to do a little bit of Googling of the person that wrote the book, Charles Busch.
Yes, correct.
And
They're a
it's-
drag queen, I believe.
Yes,
Oh,
it
great,
seems
okay.
that Charles Busch has a lot of on and off Broadway credits for plays that have titles like lesbian vampires,
Oh, sure.
and like no actual like dramatic
I see.
writing.
Yeah.
And I could see how that background might have been appealing to try to like bring some light to this subject. However, also like you should be able to write a play if you are writing a book for a
Yes.
Broadway show.
Especially because this certainly doesn't seem like a snappy cabaret style book.
No.
This
Oh,
is quite the
absolutely
opposite.
not.
This book is dreary is the first word that comes to mind. Like
Yeah.
long and dreary. You'll get some momentum going with a really good song, and then it just screeches to a
Yes.
halt every time we get back into a book scene.
100%. And that also, based on some of the things you were talking about with this context of bringing it over, there were a lot of disagreements, I think, on how to rewrite it or readapt, I don't know, for Broadway. And so they were just cutting and pasting and cutting and pasting. And it was just like a total mess, obviously. We all saw that script. So, yep.
It is nice to actually have a queer love story in this piece, I would argue.
Like accidental, though.
Absolutely.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
Like-
don't think it's right.
it wasn't intentional in any way. So it could have been done a lot better, I think.
Well, because it's like you were saying, it seems like they maybe tried to take elements of that Billy character from London and then like morph that into Marcus, but we just ended up getting a character that feels kind of like undefined and only serves to like advance the plot. Certain plot points as opposed to actually doing anything meaningful to this story.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I didn't know that Act 1 had ended. Like, I thought, because Act 2 opens with that song about the club,
right? And then Paul's on the bootleg being like, there's still so much of this show
We're at
left.
Act 2, and there's an hour and a half left in the show. It's so long. And
I understand why they wanted to end Act 1 with Karma Chameleon. But then surely you could have, like, shuffled some things around.
Yeah.
There is no greater sin in theater, in my opinion, than an Act 2 that is longer than an Act 1. In my opinion, every show should be 1 act, 90 minutes. But if it's got to be 2 acts, the second act can't be over an hour. That is a disaster.
It's got to be a smart 45.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I do want us to bleed a little into the music because there are certain things that I think go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So let's maybe sprinkle in some chat about music and lyrics. Thoughts?
Incredible
10 out of
score.
10.
Elton John could never.
Elton John wants to.
Boy George went so hard for us
Didn't have
on
to.
this score. Didn't have to, but he did that for me.
Yeah.
This score fucking slaps.
Yeah,
It's
it does.
so good. There are
agree.
so many bangers. And
Every song, even the ballads, I'm like, I want to hear this 100 more times.
Very few skips on the soundtrack. If you read some of the reviews of the show, and if you watch the Show Business documentary where they cover Taboo, they talk a lot. A lot of the critics talk about how this is like one of the best pop scores we'd seen on Broadway up to that point.
And actually, I might argue even until now. Like, I don't know many other pop scores that I like really want to go back and listen to.
Kinky Boots.
Oh, this is way better than Kinky Boots.
I know.
This is so much better than Kinky
Lauper
Boots.
could never.
Could never.
What's the ballad at the start of the show is Stranger in This World?
That's the one he sings.
That's a beautiful song. I love that song.
And the arranging on this, like the ensemble singing is amazing. I wonder if other folks heard this, other composers and arrangers heard this, and they were like, oh, this is the sound that's going to like carry us
That's what
through
you said,
to
Paul.
the 2010s.
How did I?
You said American Psycho.
Because this show also has a few really different personalities. So there's some bits where it's like, did Duncan Sheik hear this and be like, okay, I'm going to do that for all of American Psycho? And then there's other bits that are like grimy and rocky, and they're like kind of like Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which makes sense because this is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from John Cameron Mitchell, I'm sure.
True.
Yeah, but as you said, the opening number, we get very much like a cabaret
Absolutely.
kind of vibe as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another highlight for me is the Sexual Confusion song.
That is
a
my
bop.
It's a
favorite
great
song. I listened to
Got a
that
great
song
hook.
so much in 2004. Perhaps. Maybe I should have thought about the context of
should've.
it a bit more.
Yeah.
Why is
when
this
I was
so
like,
appealing
why
to me
am I-
right now?
why am
Why do
I
I
so
love this?
obsessed with this song. Oh, it's so good. Petrified is so beautiful as
Petrified's
well.
beautiful.
Oh, gosh.
And the top of Act 2, the song called Everything Taboo, about like what goes on in the nightclub.
Right? That's
It's
how
like a
it goes?
straight up like Much Dance 99 track, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you would it reminds me of like this is the rhythm of the night.
Totally.
Yes.
And even though, honestly, and again, this is more of a staging and lighting thing, but aesthetically and from a staging perspective, that the images are very much in line with that
Absolutely.
vibe.
Yeah.
Okay, here is my main point of contention
Yes.
with how this all fits together.
Yes, please.
We have these total bops
Yep. Real nice songs.
that are coming out of nowhere. Like, we are taught that in musical theater, you sing when words are not enough. When you have no words left, you've come to such a heightened place that you must sing. Okay? This script does not give us what we need to launch into these songs. And sometimes the songs happen 3 scenes after the action that should have catapulted the songs.
Absolutely.
Example. Act 2, Big Sue. We have the falling out with Leigh. Okay. They have their fight we, instead of cutting to that song that she sings from home on a chair on a lazy boy, we go to a new scene so they can bring in the lazy boy with Big Sue on it. She talks to her mom on the phone. Mom, oh, I did call you. Song. It's like, no, I want that ballad coming fresh off of that argument. So anyway,
Or
that
even better,
happens
not
a few
at all.
times. Or
And
not
let's
at
just
all.
keep on
Take it or
moving.
leave it. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We could
I
do
agree. Yeah.
without that. And my introduction to this show was through the soundtrack. And I feel it's interesting to me because I feel like you get kind of a lot of what you need to know to propel the story through the music.
100%.
So I'm like, could we not have just got rid of the book altogether and
Yes.
gone like full rent with this? Like, why did we need
Not a terrible idea.
I like that
any
idea.
book at all?
I quite
Yeah.
like that
Truly.
idea.
Ends up being like an American Idiot is another one that jumps to mind, which also runs at like
Yes.
85 minutes in and out. Yeah.
Sensible.
And I mean, probably you would need to do some reworking of some of the lyrics.
You're clearly in reworking mode already, though. You know?
Yeah.
Like, you made an almost entirely new show from what was in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And I think they
Unbelievable.
did, but they did carry over a lot of the songs.
So
did
this
they
is what
not?
I'm saying.
Yeah.
So why not spend the energy you were spending on building a new book into, I think it's a great idea, make it almost like rock opera style.
Yes.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I like
Personally.
that.
I'm so happy that Boy George went so hard and wrote us an entire new
Yes.
score, but I do love that we get two of like the most classic Boy George
Yes.
hits, Karma Chameleon and Do You Really
You
Want to
Really
Hurt
Wanna
Me?
Hurt Me, yeah.
Both great songs. I also do, it's so cheesy, but I kind of like love the finale number as well
Oh, yeah.
because like I
It is
said,
nice.
it's giving rent when
Yeah.
everyone is like
Yeah.
coming back together and
Follies.
there's this call, come on
Follies,
in
yeah.
from
Right.
the outside. Yes.
Folks, I keep
Follies.
saying follies because the play is sort of structured like they go back to this now closed taboo. This is like where the show opens and also where it closes, what brings them back together. So if you're wondering why I kept saying follies,
Kind of
that's
is Follies.
it's like
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
yeah,
It's a little bit.
Follies
There was
is.
also, I don't have the where I pulled this quote from, a review of some sort. I'm sorry. But somebody had said Charles Busch has written Funny Girl for Boy George, which is also hilarious to me because Funny Girl is another show that is absolutely terrible. That
Yeah.
is like a star vehicle that has some really banging songs in it.
Absolutely.
But it's also kind of that biographical moment.
Totally. For the purposes of just what I've been hearing on in our discussion, we should keep the book separate and
Yes,
do
please.
music and lyrics as its own thing.
Yep.
So, Tat, I'm sure you're familiar, but here at Monkeys and Playbills, we have a rating system. It's very official,
Scientifically proven, scientifically tested.
and we continue to test it
We,
daily.
we, rate
Okay.
it, we rate shows out of 10 playbills because playbills is not just what we refer to our fans as, it's also a rating system.
Yes.
We rate monkeys against playbills. So
Yeah.
out of 10 playbills, how many monkeys would you give the book to this show?
0.
0!
Whoa!
Maybe
No,
1.
get it out of here.
It's so bad.
It's
Yeah,
no
I
good.
mean, it's really bad.
I was going to say 3 and I thought that was low, but
Oh,
fuck
wow.
me.
I was going to say 1.
Okay, we're all on the same page more or less.
But we just have different ideas about monkeys to playbills.
Yes, absolutely.
That's all. Yeah. So, yeah, 1, 0,
Whoa.
3. Great.
Yeah.
What's the average on that? 0.25?
0.25. That checks out, to be honest. That makes sense.
Great.
What about the music and
Sorry.
lyrics, though, out of 10 playbills?
I give it 69 Raul
Yes!
Esparzas saying,
Whoa.
I'm his friend. 69 times.
Oh my God. We have a new rating system, everybody.
That would count as book, so maybe book is 1.
Oh.
And I give it 69 Raul Esparzas doing that, like, option up
Option
at the end
up
of
at the end of
Petrified.
Petrified, yep.
I was going to say 8.
Oh, wow.
So there's an 8 for you.
I was gonna say 12, but since that technically isn't real, I'll go 10.
Well, we've
because
got,
I
we've got
really
69, 12, and 8 as our ratings.
But it's 69 Raul Esparzas,
That's
not
right.
monkeys
Right,
or
right.
playbills.
Very good.
Actually, 69 of his, like, vocal cords. Just, like, doing a choice.
Good job, everybody. Let's talk about direction and choreo. Directed by, remember I told you to hold on to that
Yep.
name, here it is, Christopher Renshaw.
All right.
Musical director was Jason Howland, who we've
Yes.
talked about before. Was that Bonnie and Clyde?
Absolute legend. He's done a bunch of stuff, including most recently was like the driving musical force on Paradise Square on Broadway.
Yes. Wonderful.
Jason Hale also wrote Little Women.
Oh, that's right.
Is like
okay.
a major player, one of the coolest theater music professionals working in Broadway today.
Choreography by Mark Dendy, but then also drama because there was an unbilled, uncredited choreographic consultant, Jeff Calhoun, who I believe is Newsies.
That's so funny.
So that to me is dramatic in itself.
Yeah.
Big time drama. Our director, Christopher Renshaw, famously of High Society and the King and I revival.
Apparently the King and I revival in 96 was iconic, though, which is probably why everyone was like, let's have him do Taboo. It only makes sense.
It only makes sense. Taboo is actually the King and I. Same cinematic universe, for sure.
So do you have any insight into some of the drama that went on in this creative team?
A little bit, yes. I believe that there was a lot of talk that Rosie should have fired our friend Christopher. Mm-hmm. She did not.
Why?
Yeah.
So why should she have?
Because he was doing a bad
Just,
job, I guess.
So no exterior reason. The direction was bad.
Apparently he was
well.
quite unhinged, and people thought he should take a break after Taboo UK.
Yeah.
And then Rosie asked him, like, can you please come back? And everyone was like, no, don't do that. Like, he's not ready or
he's
something.
Burnt right out.
Yeah, it's something along those lines. And then he said, no, I can do it. I can do this. And
flew too close to the sun.
And came back.
And it was a disaster.
And it was a mess.
Yeah, the direction is kind of all over the place. There's some nice stuff. There's one I really liked. A choice I really liked was when Raul Esparza gets beat up at the end of the show.
Be careful. We're going to have our haters come after us. We're saying.
I'm not saying I liked that Raul Esparza got beat up. I liked they didn't have any music under it. It was all like kind of stark and I thought that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
I think also in the behind the scenes drama was Christopher Renshaw was he not friends with Boy George perhaps, and that's why Rosie didn't want to fire him or something?
Sure.
Because Rosie didn't want to upset Boy George.
Which is probably a huge dynamic at play, honestly.
It stresses me out a lot how much Boy George is involved in this show.
Yes.
And I like Boy George a lot. That's too much for one person to have the composer also be the producer and starring in the show. That's too much.
I will say, like, watching his performance, and this is like performance but also direction,
totally.
like I could have done without the Lin-Manuel Miranda of it all, having him appear in it.
Yes.
And he can still sing, I think, well enough, but he's not an actor. And in an already kind of underwritten role, I feel like he did not have the capacity to really do what some of his fellow performers, bisexual icon Raul Esparza and beautiful Ewan Morton and all of them, like they were kind of giving, and he could not match.
Right. And when you
absolutely.
are that close to it, and it is a person you knew that you're playing, it is a bit messy in that where is the line? And then how do you actually serve the piece best?
Yeah, and I mean, some of that fault is on the director and the producer, who are both responsible for the casting decision.
Yeah, I agree. So, what do you think about the choreography?
I liked it. I like they were dancing. The one thing I'd maybe say about the choreo in this show is it a little conservative for an underground queer club?
I think there wasn't actually very much of it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I understand why you would think about it as being conservative. Yeah. I think what movement was there was probably quite close, just maybe more uniform than you would see in a nightclub.
Yeah, right.
But I would wager a guess that there was a lot there that was probably quite close.
Yeah.
But again, those choreographed sequences were few and far between, so we actually didn't see a lot.
I have never done drugs, but if I had, I certainly would not have been dancing the way they were.
That's a good point.
On when I have never done MDMA.
Is this where we list what we've done? But we're like,
no, it's all the things we haven't
my
done.
Movement certainly did not look like that.
No, you're
right.
But we weren't dancing to that music. We were not dancing to
There's
the
usually, like,
Boy George music.
like wild protest music or
Oh,
something.
it's so good.
The choreography, to be honest, was not really something I noticed or didn't notice, which
absolutely.
could be good in some contexts and bad in others.
I can agree with that. Absolutely.
I don't know.
I agree, there's certainly not much to write home about. Other than, it was nice. I wasn't like,
Yeah.
at no point was it inappropriate, or was I like, oh, that's not it, you know?
Yeah.
I'm just so curious, like, what was so bad about it that they called in this, like, person to help with it? Like, there really weren't that many choreographed sequences. So I'm like, how bad was the ball dropped initially, right? Like, for these 5 small numbers to have gone so off the rails. So they must have taken a lot of what was originally there, but then I go, oh, the venue was different. So when you transport venues and you're like, oh, this thing that you made for a nightclub, like, now we're going to put it on stage in this, like, X number of thousand seat theater. Like, that maybe would be where the disconnect would happen.
Yeah, you can't just take it and make it work.
Yes.
If we're going to speculate wildly, I would also...
Is that not what we
That's
do
what
here?
we do here. It could have even been that thing, this is sincerely wild speculation, of like, you know how you can't get rid of the director for whatever reason, even though it's not going well? So all the frustration gets funneled to another department, even if that department's like
Yes.
not even in the worst shape. Like if there's anything maybe even like kind of wrong with it,
Yeah.
that becomes the punching bag.
Yeah, like you're putting out a fire in one area because you cannot put out
Exactly.
the other
right?
one. Yeah.
So like maybe at the point when shit was hitting the fan, Choreo was like, had some holes in it or something. And they're like, well, that's the problem. Let's get on that right now.
Yes. Okay, the only other thing I'm going to say, and this maybe might be an unpopular opinion to you, Paul, because you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
So they recreated some of Leigh Bowery's performance art on stage. And before I watched the video, I had done a little bit of looking into Leigh Bowery, and I found that, like, it seemed that his art was very shock value. And then when they did their version of it, it was, like, very tempered.
Yes.
Like, they talk about that, specifically the birth moment, and how it was, like, so shocking. And then the way they did it on stage, it was very, like, PG. And I was like, oh, we are not getting the same vibe. And you could have gone full Splash Zone with this.
Which is so interesting, too, because you have Leigh Bowery's literal friend, Boy George, and Leigh Bowery seems like a person who would not want their art to be watered down in any capacity.
Exactly.
And that was another thing where it's like, I suppose I understand the desire to, like, want to show that, but was it necessary to the story?
Right.
Like, not especially.
So it's what it is. It's Leigh Bowery on stage, fake gives birth to his wife,
Nicola.
Yeah.
And on stage she pops out and she's like naked, but in a bodysuit, because it's Broadway, obviously, and that kind of like poses around and shit.
Like a magician's assistant.
Based on my very brief experience researching Leigh Bowery, this show didn't really capture his art and like what it seemed to be going for.
Which is disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because isn't that supposed to be half of the point of this show?
Right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Do you want to do the direction in Choreo as 1 or 2? Or do you have a point?
No.
Yeah.
I can do it as 1.
Yes,
I was just
I
putting
agree.
my finger up.
Is that your rating? You were putting one finger up?
No, my rating would be 4.5 sausages out of 10. It was just all underwhelming. It just
Likewise.
nothing to write home about, but nothing about the direction or choreo, like, personally offended me. Other than now we're talking about the Leigh Bowery thing, and I'm actually a little personally offended by that, because it feels like we are doing a disservice to this person, but 4.5.
I'm very similar, like 5 MDMA adult club goers out of 10.
And I am 4 magician's assistants.
Guys, we haven't lab tested this.
It's a new season. We're going off the map. We're going
off
rogue.
the rails. Thank you, Canada Council. So, yeah. I think we're all kind of in that same world. It's like they made it on stage. There were some visuals that were just fine, but nothing to write home about.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the design.
It was giving me someone lit a match on the Hamilton set. All the wood disappeared, and like that was what was left.
It was giving me our regional theater did Next Normal last year. So let's just move that back.
Bleachers! We need bleachers. Actually, bleachers would have been helpful, I think.
Who did this?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I don't even hate it.
Okay, here we go.
It was fine. It like served a purpose.
That makes it seem so mean. I don't even hate it.
I know. Okay, here are our people. Scenic design by Tim Goodchild. Costume design by Mike Nichols and Bobby Pierce together. Lighting design by Natasha Cates. We have sound design by Jonathan Deans. And then hair and makeup design by Christine Bateman.
The costume design ruled?
I liked
was
it.
so good.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I usually, most of the time, I will say, hate most costumes I see on Broadway, especially if they're trying to do something contemporary.
I
because
agree.
often it looks like the designers don't actually know how normal people dress, and it makes me furious. The costumes in the show were so good, and look actually very, like, in some cases were imitating actual looks that were done, like, really, really well.
Yes.
It looked expensive
Oh, I
as
was
They
fuck.
gonna
nailed
say.
all the Leigh Bowery looks on Boy George.
Yes. The tailoring,
Yeah.
the wigs, like even the accessories, the hats, like all of that, I was just like, oh, this I recognize. Like this feels, again, if I had lived it, I might say, oh, this seems like an accurate representation.
Yes. Everyone looked so good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well done.
Yeah, so that's the highlight for me.
Yes, I agree.
The other highlight for me is in the set is there's George's apartment has this big wall
Yes.
of
It's like photos or mirrors or there's something. There's like a big tall
I just can't read my writing. I think it's photos.
The first squat or the expensive apartment in
The
Act
expensive
Two?
apartment
Okay.
in Act 2 is what I'm
Okay,
thinking of.
good.
Is the other set I really liked.
I actually thought, because sometimes our complaint with sets is that they either do too much or too little. I actually think they did okay in terms of the amount of set pieces. Like, I never felt like, these actors are getting, like, swallowed up by the sets.
Yep.
They weren't necessarily great, but I definitely wasn't, like, offended by...
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose the
Yeah.
challenge would be to, if I was a designer, I mean, the challenge is how do you take something which is a squat or a warehouse and put it on stage and make it functional and not look terrible.
Right.
But it's supposed to look kind of terrible. Like,
Yeah.
I have no complaints about the set. It did what it was supposed. It was very functional.
Yes, very functional.
And it served every purpose it needed to. Although I would say maybe from a direction standpoint, as you were talking about earlier, like a little bit underutilized in some instances.
I think it might have been a stronger choice to spend a lot more time at Taboo.
Yeah.
Which is potentially maybe even what the UK version did because it was set in a nightclub itself.
Yeah.
So then we can go all in on really creating this environment. So when the show's called Taboo, for God's sake, want to really get the...
I believe it's called Taboo.
My mistake. I apologize sincerely to all our listeners.
overseas listeners.
Like, so let's really build Taboo and make it look incredible and have a lot of the action take place there. Then maybe have an apartment or two that you can go to and that's it.
Yeah, I got a little taboo in the lighting, I suppose. I wrote
Yes.
down in my notes bisexual lighting. We love to see
love
it, like
the
a pink and
bi-lighting.
a blue.
I love that.
In honor of Raul Esparza.
Yes.
And I mean, the lighting, Natasha Cage, she's done
Yes.
100 million shows on
It
Broadway.
was
like,
really... I
would not have
expected.
expected anything other than
Yes.
very good work
It's a
from
really
her,
good
and
point.
she served.
Do we want to throw down some ratings for design and then talk about the performances maybe?
I think that's a great idea.
Let's put all the design in together, which I think is generous to the set, but that'll be... well, not, I mean, because
It'll all
like we said, the
balance
set's
out.
fine, but like,
Yeah.
the lighting's quite nice and the costumes are just awesome.
Oh, actually, before we do that,
Yes.
quick shout out to the sound design because I actually heard a nice balance even
Yeah.
on this bootleg. So
Yeah.
good job.
Very good job.
Out of 10 playbills, how many monkeys would you give the design?
The costumes were 12 sausages out of 10. The set was 6 page boy hats out of 10. And the lighting was good. It was 9 monkeys out of 10 playbills.
Yay!
The costumes were just so good, and
Yeah.
the set was just, like, serviceable and fine, but
Yes.
holy shit, those costumes look so, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
He looked exactly like Boy George. And if you
Yeah.
see Ewan Morton, like, in rehearsal, he looks nothing like Boy George.
True.
Like, the transformation of the costumes and makeup was really remarkable.
Yeah.
Costumes are a 10 out of 10 for me. Set is 6 regional productions of Next to Normal out of 10. And Lighting's a 7.5. Those are my ratings.
Jillian.
My ratings are as follows. I would say costumes, hair, and makeup would be 15 tulle skirts out of 10.
Yeah. And the hats. The hats
The
were
hats,
so good.
very good.
honestly,
Yeah.
I would say the sets were like a 5 or 6
Yeah.
rolling beds. And then what am I missing? Lighting. I would say lighting and sound together were like a 7.5, 8.
Yeah. I think those are fair ratings.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so excited to talk about the performances, so let's get to it. Here we go. I've been waiting this whole episode to say this. Raul Esparza's accent in this show is unhinged. It is wild. It's one of the wildest things I've ever heard.
He made it up.
Yeah, did he ever?
Specifically for this.
Yeah.
I think I might have mentioned this in our Leap of Faith episode that I am shocked and surprised that he has not had more vocal health issues based on his...
The growls?
The growling.
Yeah.
But then I go, okay, he's clearly doing it in a way that feels authentic to
Yeah.
his production, his vocal production. Therefore, okay, that probably answers that. I just find it really jarring. Like, I made a note that, like, sometimes they're having this really nice quiet scene and then I'm being yelled at by Raul Esparza and I feel a little bit, like, weird about it. But I think as far as a charismatic touchstone for the audience,
Absolutely.
he is excellent in this production.
And he sounds great. He's got a great voice. He's an absurd
Yes.
singer. There's no
I mean, Petrified, you're right.
Such
11
a
o'clock
good singer.
number.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say, and I don't know if it has to do with the book or his performance or whatever, but like when I was saying that we should like 86 all the supporting characters, like I do, like the one I would 86 the least would be Raul Esparza.
Yes.
He does,
Yeah.
and which is funny because his character, like Philip, or who
Philip. Yeah,
Philip,
Yeah,
the
we
second
think.
time we've said that name.
had to confirm that that's the character's name.
Like that was the supporting character I wanted to
Yeah.
see the
Absolutely.
most of. And I think that's a combo of Raul Esparza. Mm-hmm. That's mostly Raul Esparza.
Yes, I
guess.
agree.
It's a bit weird though, given and maybe this is an issue with the book, that he gets the 11 o'clock number
It is
Yes,
interesting.
it's very weird.
instead of
that was
either
odd.
Leigh Bowery or
Boy
George.
George.
Yeah, I thought for sure Boy George would get it.
Oh, and like
That makes total sense.
dramatically,
Yeah.
he absolutely
Yeah,
should not
like
have
wasn't he
been
in jail
Philip.
or something?
Yeah.
Anyway,
But like again, we could have. They were writing the book. It wasn't
Yeah.
like somebody put a gun to their head and was like,
Use
"He's
this."
in jail, so he can't." Like you literally wrote the
Yeah.
book. You could move him out of jail and give him the 11 o'clock number.
Raul Esparza does a very nice job. He's a
Yeah,
very
and his
talented
costumes
performer.
look pretty cool too.
Yeah.
I will say he gets to wear some of the coolest like punk rock looks.
two things about Raul before we move on.
Yes.
One, in that New York Post article, the postmortem one, What Went Wrong with Taboo, they talk about how he was like pissed. Like he hated the show.
He hated the show,
Really?
and him and Rosie O'Donnell allegedly did not get along.
Fascinating.
The other thing that I found hilarious was that Ben Brantley from the Times,
Dear
welcome
friend,
back,
dear
Ben
friend.
Brantley, referred to Raul Esparza's performance as, quote, Maggie Smith doing restoration comedy. Thank you, Ben Brantley. Sums it up perfectly. Because that wasn't an
So
opinion to me.
funny.
Like, I'm like, normally Ben Brantley's pretty opinionated, but that
Yeah.
didn't seem so much of an opinion as a fact. Like, to me, I was like, that is
Yeah,
an
an
observation.
astute
that he made.
observation.
So, yes. Anyway, yay, Raul Esparza.
Ewan Morton rules playing Boy George.
Such a fan.
Rules.
So good.
What
So
has
good.
he been up to? How did his solo music career go? Did
He's
anyone ask
done
him?
very little since
He
this.
was in Hamilton, wasn't he?
I believe he's currently in as King George in Hamilton.
Yeah,
he will
that
next
checks
be
out.
appearing in Sunday in the Park with George.
Ah, good. I could see him in that too.
Before that, he did
As
a
Dot.
cute little run of Sondheim on Sondheim.
See? You
As
got it.
George.
Right?
He just looks so beautiful.
Stunning
in
angel.
this
And he
show.
sounds incredible.
Yeah.
He sounds amazing.
And his performance was so nuanced. I think I was like surprised just like in contrast with some of the other maybe like
Raul
more
Esparza?
vibrant characters.
Yeah.
he was so
Yeah.
settled,
Yeah.
but not too mature, which I appreciated very much.
And in the show business documentary, when Raul Esparza is laying on the mat being a little baby, Ewan Morton is just like, this has been hard, but I think we'll get it.
yeah.
Like, seems like just such a kind,
Yes.
Just
nice
exact
man.
kind of coworker who gets it, right? Who
Yes.
gets it.
Yes, very much so. And he came over with that
Yes.
role in the show.
And was very devastated, rightfully so,
Yeah.
when it closed. Because you can tell he really loves this role.
well,
and
they
that's
got
hard.
done very dirty, but we'll talk about that later.
That one's coming.
Boy George does an okay job. Like the actor Boy George O'Dowd playing Leigh Bowery.
Yeah,
He's okay.
okay.
He's okay.
It's a bit
As
flat.
as we said
Yeah.
before, like it's pretty evident that he does not have the same level of experience as some of his Tisch-educated
Yeah.
coworkers. I will say he got done really dirty. There's so many reviews that talk about his weight. And I get it that
So
times were different in 2004, but the fat phobia against
Oh
him
my God.
That's
is
gotta
like
go. Yeah.
unbelievable.
insane.
Yeah.
It's
nutty.
so mean.
My favorite Boy George performance to date is his current performance on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills as featured cast member. So I guess one of the housewives, Dorit, her husband PK is his manager. So he's like around sometimes,
Oh my God,
and he like
that's incredible.
stays with them when he's in town. Like it's the
That's
weirdest
so
dynamic.
funny.
He's always been himself, which I appreciate, and
Yeah.
you see so much of himself in his acting, and I think that's where we're getting a bit tripped up because we're like, oh, we want you to be this character you're playing, not yourself, who we also love.
Yeah.
But it's just this is not the right moment.
This doesn't quite seem like he has the ability to embody Leigh Bowery, even though he obviously knew Leigh very well and like knows this story in his heart.
Yeah.
Just doesn't quite have the skills in his toolbox.
Fine, not everybody has to be an actor.
This is
Correct.
it.
Exhibit A, myself.
me as well. I would. You know what I mean? Like.
But it's too bad that he could not have like removed himself.
What are our thoughts on Big Sue?
I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that character just had to go. Like, I
Yes.
could not be bothered.
Nice voice, but I don't care about this character.
The woman playing Nicola has a absurd voice.
Yes, stunning voice.
Sarah Berry
Sarah Berry.
sounds fantastic.
Was in Beauty and the Beast.
In Beauty and the Beast. Later went on after that to do some next normal standby work on
That's
on
right.
Diana.
Very
This makes
good.
total sense.
That checks out.
The Nicola character, like, Sarah B did a great job with what she was given. That character, too, was... And I think it's, again, partly the fault of the book to circle back, because I know I should care about her and Leigh Bowery's relationship, but I just, like, couldn't be bothered to...
Yeah.
Even though it's so fascinating, like, he was queer, but then they got married towards the end of
Yes.
his life, and it seemed... From what I gathered, that was actually like a real
happy
and
partnership,
genuine
absolutely.
love
Yeah.
story. But unfortunately, the book and maybe also a little bit George O'Dowd's performance didn't allow her to really shine in the way that she maybe could have had that role been adjusted a bit.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
astute.
Is it time to talk about the ensemble?
Yeah, let's talk about the ensemble.
This poor ensemble.
Oh,
So
they work their ass
underutilized.
off.
Yes.
So underutilized.
Yeah.
They were singing from off stage so much, and I felt really bad because they sounded amazing and their energy was unreal. I just wish they would have been able to do more.
Yeah.
I wanted to see them more.
I feel the exact same way. I feel that way about like the featured ensemble-ish people as well, which I would include like Marilyn in that.
Yeah.
I guess Marcus is the other one we haven't talked about.
I guess so,
He's not really
hey?
featured ensemble, and he's like fine.
He's fine.
Yeah, nice voice. I really liked that Act 2 number
Yeah.
that he did. The 10 o'clock number.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a 9 o'clock, a 10, and then the 11. We got
And
it
then like an
all.
11:30 because it's a long show.
So long.
So what do we think of their performances all in all, if we're going to rate them out of 10?
I mean, I think everyone was serving to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
And I would include George O'Dowd in that also.
Yeah.
Like, I think he really was trying.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
That is true. I would say, I'm sure many of us have been part of shows where, in spite of certain things going on, you still rally and get the thing on stage. We need to give credit where credit is due. And I think a lot of the reason that this actually went up and there was such a cult following was because of this cast, I think. So that's my take on it, which to me brings it to a 10. But I think without that drama, I might have called it like an 8.5 or a 9.
Yeah, I was going to say 8.5. They're really good. They're real
That's
nice.
it.
Jill, you said it really well. I can't say it better. Yeah.
Same.
Great.
Yeah.
Look at us landing on the same.
All right,
plane.
y'all. Let's dive into our final category then, which is Tony Awards and loose ends. Tatiana, would you like to talk about Rosie O'Donnell?
So, the thing to me that is like so fascinating
Yes.
about Taboo is that for all intents and purposes, as we've discussed, like, yeah, the show had some flaws, but I don't think it should have flopped as bad as it did.
I agree.
The reason for that, from what I can gather, is twofold.
Yeah.
One, for whatever reason, it seems like the press was just out to get this show.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
For no reason, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
And it's so bizarre. And we see it in this documentary show business, which follows a bunch of shows in the 2004 Tony Awards season.
Yeah.
Their processes and gearing up towards
Yeah.
their opening night and then gearing up for the Tony Awards as well.
Absolutely.
And Michael Riddell particularly just seems to have, like, I wouldn't say single-handedly, because there were obviously other factors as well that contributed to its closing. But this guy could just, like, not get enough of tearing the show down.
Ugh.
And
Or
you
other shows too. Like, it seemed like he really had his back up about like pretty much everything that season. And it was like there were other folks around him being like, oh, this actually has merit. This is really good. We enjoyed this aspect. And it was like, yeah, it was a weird dynamic to see what the conversations media-wise were swirling around this show.
Because in this documentary, there's a whole sequence. One of the sequences they filmed is a bunch of theater critics sitting around talking about the shows they're
Yes.
covering. And one of the other shows is Wicked.
Yes.
And here Michael Riddell starts the conversation with, so it's this Stephen Schwartz thing, you know, like Godspell, Pippin. Is anyone into that? Like, does anyone like that? You're a musical theater critic!
Yeah, like, aren't you supposed to like that? Like,
Or at least, like, give it the due of
Yeah.
for the place that it holds in the canon.
so
Yeah,
strange.
and it's so interesting because you see later in that documentary, sweet little Ewan Morton,
Yeah.
so devastated because they just, like, I don't think they could have had, like, a 10 out of 10 show. The issues with the book could have been, like, it could have been a perfect book, it could have been a perfect show, but if that kind of media campaign had been going on, I still don't think they would have been able to overcome it.
Yeah.
That's exactly seems to be the sentiment from this documentary.
Yeah.
So one of the quotes from Boy George that I wrote down, because I just thought it was perfect, because he's so sassy and I love that about him. So he says, "The critics, the people that are supposed to be championing and holding up this great art form, are the people who are destroying it. That's the biggest irony of all. Don't go on about how we will save this valuable art form and then do everything you can to make it fail. Because if you stop shows like Taboo being successful or just being on Broadway, all you're ever going to have is Andrew Lloyd Webber for the rest of your lives." And then he does this like maniacal laugh, and I thought that was amazing.
That's so cute.
And it's
Yeah.
perfect. It really encapsulates what you're talking about.
I will say, I don't think that a critic's job is necessarily to only champion, because we absolutely do need
Yeah.
discourse about
Yes.
things that are flawed. Otherwise, we're just gonna have a bunch of
Whatever.
Nothing.
crap
Yeah,
and
totally.
like nothing interesting maybe will happen. But you can be critical and not be such an asshole.
Yeah. So that's one problem.
Yes.
What's the other one?
Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah, absolutely. Sole producer.
Rosie
Was she the
O'Donnell.
sole
Or
Producer,
definitely the
or maybe
producer with
one-
the
She
biggest.
was. She contributed $10 million.
of her own purse, which we will
Of
see
her
your
own purse.
children's
We've
book
got two
about it.
producers listed, Rosie O'Donnell and Adam Kenwright, and 3 associate producers.
Okay,
So
so
really,
in the
most-
hierarchy.
Yeah.
Mostly Rosie.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Unfortunately for Rosie, it seems that the timing of this project, it like conflicted with a lawsuit that was going on
That's right.
at the time. And she was having kind of that Ellen moment a little bit years and years before Ellen's downfall, where it appeared that perhaps she was not the same as her persona.
Yep.
that may have contributed to the downfall.
Fascinating.
as
And
well.
you do read articles about that at the time as well. None of them, at least none of the ones I could find, go into like dishing the dirt, but there's
Right.
always kind of like things running around of like Rosie O'Donnell's lost control of this show. Rosie O'Donnell has like mismanaged this.
Yeah, and it's like 2004 was not that long ago, but in a lot of ways it was a long time ago as well. And I mean, I don't know if audiences were ready for a show that was so gay.
Yep.
Like, this
Yeah.
is 5 years
Absolutely.
before we've seen, like, RuPaul's Drag Race and that kind of mainstreaming of gender bending and that sort of thing. Apparently, I read something on the Broadway World message board. The ad campaign was just, like, photos of a bunch of people, like, peeing into urinals. What? Yeah, I couldn't find a picture of it.
Like from the
Like, there was a billboard,
I Love Pretty
apparently.
Boys number, you know, where
yeah,
Oh,
there was
that number.
a
Yeah, yeah.
billboard, apparently, that was just a bunch of, like, people at urinals.
that's very bizarre.
Yeah, that's...
I would be so curious to see now that drag is so mainstream
Yeah.
and performance art, I would say, has come a little bit more into the mainstream.
Yeah.
Like, how would this show play? The subculture is not such a subculture anymore. It's
Yeah.
mainstream now, a lot of the things that we see in this show.
I think you're exactly right, and this will take us into the Tony game, because we know what won best musical this year
Yes.
is friggin' Avenue Q,
Yes.
one of the, maybe the biggest upsets.
one of the biggest upsets in Tony history.
I would say the next one being the Into the Woods year.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Into the Woods Phantom?
Yep.
That year. That's upsetting to me.
But that wasn't a pop culture upset as much as this
no,
was, you know?
exactly. You're
But
right.
like, well, I
You're
guess my
right.
point is, like, Avenue Q has its own take on a lot of things. Some of which continue to play today. Some of which are a little harder to swallow today.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Avenue Q's take on gay people and queer relations is much easier to swallow than Taboo's. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
Like they both have queer content, but in
Yeah.
very
I mean,
different ways.
Yes,
Very.
delivered very differently.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
had seen Rent at this point, and we had
We
seen
had.
Robbie
That's true.
Her at
That's
this
true.
point,
You're
but I
right.
think Rent is not so gay
Yeah.
as
Right.
Taboo.
Taboo's real gay. So what else is in play at the Tonys this year?
So, okay, here's what we're gonna say. So you obviously are aware of 2 of the 4 nominees for Best Musical.
I think I'm aware of all of them because of the show
Ooh.
business documentary, right?
Okay,
I
so
don't
there
know if those
4?
were the 4.
There are
Were those
4.
the 4?
there is, of course, Avenue Q.
Avenue Q, Wicked,
Wicked.
Taboo.
No,
Taboo.
it was.
Taboo's not even
It
nominated
wasn't
for Best
nominated
Musical.
for
No,
Best
Taboo was
Musical.
only nominated for 3 Tonys.
And
I
is
think.
Caroline or Change nominated?
Carolina
or
Change was nominated, and the 4th. Any guesses?
Any hints?
Sure. Another person from Down Under.
Oh, the boy from Oz!
Boy from Oz!
Yay!
Yes.
The boy next door. That performance, for some reason, lives in my brain.
Oh.
Hugh Jackman at the Tony Awards that year.
Because there's some
with the
articles
piano.
that are like
Piano.
Yeah.
Oh
that are
my
like
God.
as if Taboo flopped and much worse Australian biopic musical Boy from Oz
And
crushes.
wasn't he also gay? Like, there was a lot of,
Yeah, there's a
there was
lot of
gay
similarities
content,
between,
But that was
um,
presented in a way that I think was a lot more
Yeah,
Yes.
palatable to the general public.
Yeah.
Yep. So those were the 4 original musicals that were nominated.
Oh my god, the boy from Oz.
I know.
Took a nomination from
It's
Taboo.
also wild to me that it was like that was when it was. It feels so much older
Yeah.
than that, you know? And then there were some revivals going on at the same time.
Okay.
Okay.
Not a clue. So what are some hints?
So Alfred Molina was nominated for his role in
Oh,
this.
in Fiddler.
Yay!
Yeah, you played Tevye. Totally.
Good. Okay.
Wait, was this the same time when Rosie O'Donnell was also in? Was she in
Oh,
that revival? of
Actually,
Fiddler
you
on the
might
Roof?
be right. I
Was
think
she?
she was in
No.
it. Yeah, I think that's
She-
the crossover we didn't know we needed. Oh,
She
God,
went
her
she went
focus
into
was so
that in
split.
2005.
Hot on the heels of
The flop?
the flop of Taboo. Rosie's like, you know what? Okay, I tried the producing thing. I've done the hosting thing. I'm going to do the...
And the thing that we
Broadway
have to
thing.
say about Rosie, and they talk about this in some of the discourse on Taboo, she loves theater.
Yes.
And has been
Absolutely.
such a champion of theater in a way that very few
Yeah.
Absolutely.
people are.
You're so right. So, okay, so
Okay.
we've got Fiddler. There's 2 others that
Yep.
I don't even have clues for, so I'll just tell you what they are.
'Kay.
But then the final one I would really like for you to figure
Okay,
out.
so what are the 2?
Any
So the
two.
Wonderful Town was one of the others.
Would have never guessed that.
And Big River was one of the others. So there's one more musical that was nominated for Best Revival of a Musical. This musical is one of my favorite Sondheims.
Into the Woods.
No.
Sunday in the Park with George.
No.
Company. Merrily We Roll Along.
Wow,
No,
you're hitting them all.
there's no 04 Company.
This one was a 2000, late
Sweeney
2003. No.
West Side Story.
Assassins!
Yay!
It's the assassin, the really nice
nice.
first Assassins on Broadway, but still counts as a
Is
revival.
this with the Neil Patrick
Exactly.
Harris?
This is the Neil Patrick
Yes.
Harris one. Yeah.
So
Yes.
that was the kind of, those were the hard-hitting Broadway shows
That's a
of
cool
that
year.
season.
That's a fun year.
Nothing about that lineup makes any
Yeah.
sense to me in my brain.
Yeah.
Taboo got 4 noms and
Oh, yeah.
one
Costumes,
nothing.
right?
Yes, best costume design, best original score.
Both deserved, I would
I
say.
agree. Featured actor Raul Esparza, and then best
That's it.
leading actor Ewan Morton.
Well
so
deserved, yeah.
I think
Those are
yes,
good noms.
Well
Yeah,
deserved
I don't,
all around.
well deserved noms. One of the things I absolutely loved about the Showbiz documentary, and I would
Yes.
encourage anybody out there who even has a tiny interest in theater to watch it.
It's free on YouTube. It's a great watch.
They talk about what happened at the end of that season to the shows that flopped, essentially. And they give the dates of those flops to really put it into context how tough it is out there to make these shows happen. And so I thought that was a really good look at what a typical season on Broadway looks like, because 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work.
Well, and they talk about, they even say, like, Taboo opened in the winter, and they're like, nobody's trudging through the snow to
Yeah.
go see this, like, weird Boy George show
There are
in
no
January.
tourists.
Yeah,
Like, not
exactly.
a chance.
Yeah. So the time has come for us to make a decision. We've got all the information. We have the receipts. We've laid everything out.
Yep.
Was this show a flop? Is it actually a secret bop? Or is it so bad we have to make it stop? I say this is a secret bop. You need to redo the book, but I would see it. I would do it in a second.
I agree.
Yeah, secret bop.
Yep.
Tat, we know where you sit.
I would say this show is unequivocally a bop. And Rosie, if you're listening, release the rights.
Yes.
The world is ready now.
Yes.
I think there was another quote that I found from some unnamed source. You could look it up on Google. And they talk about how this show was maybe a bit ahead of its time. And I'd say culture has shifted so much. The people are ready.
Yes.
Rosie.
We are ready.
I'm ready. Paul's ready. Jillian's ready.
We're all ready.
Let's wrap this on up. Should this be a musical? I say yes.
I say yes.
Yes.
Oh, but maybe we want it as a rock opera.
Yes, this should be even more of a musical, if at
Yeah.
all possible.
Yeah.
Tatiana, thank you.
What a joy.
This has been wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
I know you could have gone on for like 2 more hours about this with no question.
You know what? That's okay.
We will have you back.
Oh yeah. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. There will be some other podcasts from the Village Conservatory for Music Theatre coming out imminently, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. Does anyone have any other closing words they want to end with before we sign off?
My name is George, but sometimes my friends call me Boy George.
On a clear day.
Hi everyone, this is producer Daphne speaking. Thank you all so much for listening to Monkeys and Playbills, the show where we take a look at Broadway musicals that had 100 performances or fewer before closing. To learn more about the show, you can follow us on Instagram at Monkeys and Playbills Pod, on Twitter at Monkey Playbills, or email us at monkeysandplaybillspod@gmail.com. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/monkeysandplaybills. Super exciting! We now have merch available. Visit spring.com and search Monkeys and Playbills to find mugs, t-shirts, hoodies, and more designs coming soon. Monkeys and Playbills is proud to be a Village Conservatory for Music Theatre podcast. Original music for the show is provided by Paul DeGers, and the show is produced and edited by Daphne Finlayson. We wanted to give a special thank you to the Canada Council for the Arts for supporting this season of Monkeys and Playbills, as well as 2 other podcasts now joining the Village Conservatory family. Stay tuned for more details on both of these new shows coming soon.